for me, I was like, that was the whole promise of home consoles back then was I can get arcade quality games at home. I don't have to pay a quarter each time. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like fighting games were just there. And especially in the early 90s, like Street Fighter 2 started this boom in the same way that you might think of like Fortnite now, right? Well, Fortnite is just part of the cultural landscape, right? If you ever wonder why like so many DJs of a certain age will work Street Fighter 2 samples into their work, right? Yeah. It's because it was all over the place back then. Even now, you can show Ryu or Chun-Li to all kinds of people across the world and they'll still have that connection.
Yeah, it's a staple of the culture,
exactly.
Right? So at a certain point, if something gets popular enough, then it ends up being in pop culture in different ways. And I think Street Fighter really hit that at its peak. I mean, you had like Jackie Chan dressed up as Chun-Li, and like it's Street Fighter is definitely the game that has penetrated to I would say the mainstream in the 90s. A lot of people might not believe it now, but during that time, it was such a big deal. That's why you had movies like you had the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and they made that into a game.
Yeah.
And someone told me that I should do a video about that.
So actually, if you're interested in researching it further, I want to say The Verge, is either The Verge or Polygon, did a really good historical breakdown of the production of that movie. There's a lot of gnarly stuff in there. I guess JCVD and Kylie Minogue had an affair on set. Yeah. So a lot of fun stuff there.
Yeah.
But I think what people don't realize if they weren't there was not only was Street Fighter 2 like an international phenomenon and like kind of elevated the genre of fighting games to something that everyone could recognize somehow, It was also that relative to other video games, it was huge, right? So it's like now, if a video game is big, there are more people playing video games now than ever before in human history.
That's right? Yeah.
But in the 90s, it was still mostly a thing for like kids or like adults, like kind of like 20, 30, 40-year-olds around the time that I was a kid might remember like going on dates to arcades, but it wasn't like playing video games wasn't a major entertainment habit the way it is now.
Yeah.
So Street Fighter 2 being so big and so prolific was, people like this is a video game that people might have been paying attention to for the first time since, I don't know, Tetris or something.
Yeah.
That was when I started playing fighting games. It's kind of when everyone around there started playing fighting games, right? If you're into it, then you're into it. So Street Fighter 2 and then Mortal Kombat and then Killer Instinct or whatever. But that as an avid gamer as a youth, I played everything. So I played fighting games, so I'd play RPGs, I'd play first-person shooters, I'd play RTS, I'd play all kinds of different games and genres. And eventually, like, fighting games kind of fell out of like the mainstream favor a little bit because everyone's kind of doing Street Fighter but with different characters, Street Fighter but with another button, Street Fighter but with whatever, right? Like there's a distinct mold that everyone was building off of, and over time it got a little samey, and it just didn't really. It wasn't the only exciting thing happening in video games, right?
Sure, yeah.
So, I would play plenty of online FPSs and RTS. I played Quake, I played StarCraft. Played a little bit of, like Diablo, stuff like that. Like a lot of the classic Blizzard games that everyone remembers from that era if you were around. And like also, Command and Conquer or whatever. Like I played a little bit of everything. And I kind of moved away from fighting games over the years, especially because you can only afford so many games, right? And so your console choice would often determine like what you ended up playing for the next couple of years.
Of course, yeah. If you had the Genesis or the Super Nintendo, you go on kind of separate paths.
Exactly.
Every once in a while, there'd be the serendipitous moment where there'd be a game on both platforms, and you'd be like, hey, but then that version would be different. Famously, Mortal Kombat, one had the blood code
for the Genesis,
right?
The
Super Nintendo had sweat and very bad controls, if I remember. There was like
the Super Nintendo had closer to arcade quality graphics.
Yeah, the graphics were good because the Super Nintendo just had better, graphics. Yeah. But it was I remember the controls were really like just like I think there was like an input delay or something like that. But so I think the Genesis version was superior if you just wanted like I think gameplay plus authenticity to the arcade version, but I don't know.
So the thing where I kind of messed up is I chose N64 over PlayStation. Okay. And I chose Macintosh over PC.
Okay. You didn't mess up on N64 still had
it depends. So like as a kid that mostly liked to play video games on his own. Yeah. Right. N64 is great for multiplayer. So I had like Star Fox 64, right? And got the controllers like or GoldenEye, right? That stuff was great. But for fighting games, We had like War Gods. I had a copy of War Gods. There was Mace the Dark Age. There was the Mortal Kombat trilogy.
Yeah.
Like you had Smash, obviously, right? And I played a decent amount of regular Smash, but I missed out on a lot of the JRPGs and a lot of the fighting games. Basically, because Capcom wasn't really doing Nintendo games that much back then.
Yeah.
Right. So there were a couple years where I wasn't really playing that many fighting games because I was playing RTS or I was playing FPS or I was playing, you know, the N64 games. And it wasn't until sophomore year of high school where I was messing around with an SNES ROM set because SNES was just recently emulatable. Like, you know, computers had just gotten to the point where you could reasonably emulate an SNES.
Yeah.
And so I'm on like a file sharing server. I download a file called Gundam Wing. And I'm like, I don't know what this is, but sounds like an interesting name. I open it up and I see a bunch of cool anime mechs. One's called Death Side, so I'm like, oh, that out of all these mechs, I'm obviously picking Death Side,
Death
right?
Side, yeah.
And the Gundam Wing fighting game for SNES was actually surprisingly good. So it does a lot of really interesting things. The characters, the art is actually more complex than most other fighting games at that point. Like they were really pushing the limits of the SNES.
Okay.
There's some neat effects that they do with like transparency on like beam attacks and there's like a chain cancel system. So it feels really advanced to me as someone who hadn't really been playing, other than like I played a little bit of X-Men versus Street Fighter in the arcades and blah, 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 blah. But I didn't really get acquainted with those games that much. Yeah. And just stumbling over a random ROM set, I find the Gundam Wing game. I'm like, this is really cool. I should see what fighting games are doing now.
Oh, okay. So that kind of was like a gateway into...
absolutely.
Or
which is why I have Gundam Wing posters right next to my Street Fighter posters up there.
Okay, so this is kind of, this is, so I guess at one point you were into fighting games because of Street Fighter 2, or maybe you were just into Street Fighter 2 mainly. And then you went the console path of the N64, which... I mean, obviously the PlayStation had, some very exclusive titles, and like I said, Capcom wasn't doing stuff for N64, and so you kind of reinvigorated your fighting game passion through the Gundam.
Yeah, so it started with Gundam, and what that got me thinking was like, oh, fighting games seem kind of like I haven't caught up with them in a little bit. I don't know what they're all about. So I went and rented a copy of Street Fighter Alpha 3. For the PlayStation. I had a PlayStation emulator on my PC at that time.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, I can try this out. Let's see what the new Street Fighters are like. And it was World Tour mode. You know, just like Street Fighter 6 World Tour mode got them back, got all the new players in now. So Alpha 3 World Tour mode got me to just not think too much about what I was doing and just it was like, oh, this is cool. There's this world map. I get to get upgrades for my character, like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That got me playing the game and seeing like, oh, this is what the art looks like right now. I also got the X-Men Mutant Academy 2. That was a good one.
Okay.
And so that got me experimenting just at home with different fighting games. Actually, Gundam Wing also got me into anime. So I like to say that between introducing me to fighting games and anime, Gundam Wing basically ruined my life.
Okay.
Like I'd be a lawyer or something right now. So it saved my life, but you know.
Yeah.
But so I would keep the ROM set and the emulator on. You remember the zip disks? Right?
Yeah,
100 megabyte floppy drive.
I had a zip disk. Yeah, I actually had
You remember when 100 megs was like a lot and you're like, oh, I can just carry this around. This is
floppies
crazy.
were like, what, a few megabytes?
Yeah.
Like that was it.
So I had a zip disk that I would leave in my bag when I go to school because the guy who ran the computer lab was like pretty chill as long as you weren't making noise for people. He didn't care what you're doing.
Yeah.
So after school sometimes I would hang out and I would play ROMs off my zip disk so I didn't have to save it on the computer hard drive or anything. And this other kid in my class came by and was like, oh, you play fighting games? I was like, yeah, like, no, but yeah, sure. Like, I didn't really know him that well, but he rolled up to school the next day with a Dreamcast, Alpha 3, CVS1, and Third Strike, as well as a gamepad and the Interact Alloy stick, which is this really weird arcade stick that the base looked like it was just like a glob of metal, basically. He set it up on one of the school, like the science room projectors. Yeah. And during lunch, he just beat my ass in Alpha 3. I'm like, and like, I don't know how to do anything, right? So I'm like trying to do round start Raging Demon because it works against the computer and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm using Shinakuma and he's using like actual tournament legal characters or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like one of the first times it actually sat down and played fighting games as someone who was also interested in playing fighting games.
Yeah.
As a kid, when I played Street Fighter, like I would go to the arcade and get washed because I could barely use the controls Or I would play against my friends at sleepovers, and I was like the kid in my class who was good at video games.
Okay,
right? Like that was my thing. So if a new video game came out, I would play it with them, and I wouldn't be doing good stuff or anything. I'd do like jump, heavy kick, sweep, right? The quintessential two-hit combo.
That's the best two-hit combo ever, right?
But eventually people don't want to play with you, right?
Yeah.
So this is the first time that I played with someone consistently who could beat me and also like knew what he was doing and knew how to get good at these games, right? Because he would read about strategies on the internet and try and practice stuff back then.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. So there's a moment